it was day after day. You know what I mean? I just ride by and see it, ride by and see it. You see how there'd be 15 kids out there trying to play basketball where there's like potholes in the court. That's where it all started because I rode my bike past it.
You're listening to Philly Who, the podcast that tells the stories of the doers, thinkers, and performers of Philadelphia. My name is Kevin Schmidlin, and today is the story of an NFL linebacker who overcame being deaf as a child to later become one of the best defensive players in the National Football League. Connor Barwin joined the Philadelphia Eagles in 2013, and while he has since moved on to play for other teams, he's made Philly his home. Here, he and his foundation are taking on the task of revitalizing the city's underserved public parks. The story of Connor Barwin's rise to NFL stardom and how he managed to find his passion while riding his bike down 20th Street is all now on Philly Who. Stay tuned. So, right now, at the time of this episode's release, Connor Barwin is a free agent for the 2019 NFL season. He doesn't yet know what city he's going to play for this year, but he does know what city he's going to live in: Philadelphia. That's because ever since he came here in 2013 to play for the Eagles, he and his family have made Philly their permanent home. But before Connor signed with the Birds, his home was Detroit. He grew up in nearby Hazel Park, Michigan, and was part of a huge family. He had 3 older brothers, and his mother ran a daycare out of their house, so it was a hectic life. So hectic, in fact, that it was a whole year until anybody noticed that Connor had a pretty major medical issue since birth.
I was like a year old, and my oldest brother, who was probably 5 or 6, had a bad ear infection. So we went to the local doctor, and the doctor said, "Oh, Sean's totally fine. He's got an ear infection. You know, this will be fine. But your youngest, he can't hear." And my mom was like, "Yeah, he can hear." And then the doctor turned me around and asked my mom to say something, and I didn't do anything. I didn't react. You know, and just the chaos of our family, the first year of my life, no one even realized I couldn't hear. And then that started, you know, the multi-year process of a lot of surgeries to kind of regain my hearing back, and then subsequent surgeries to my left ear where I've kind of lost my hearing in my left ear again.
Wow.
And I was extremely blessed. I mean, I couldn't hear, and then I could hear.
Yeah.
You know, I had to go through, 3 or 4 major surgeries, but a lot of people don't ever get their hearing back. So we always had that perspective, and always felt that we were very lucky.
So after several surgeries, Connor regained his hearing and was able to have a relatively normal childhood. By the time he was 10, he had the same dream as a lot of other 10-year-old boys who love sports. He wanted to dunk a basketball. But there was one difference. Instead of just dreaming about it, Connor became obsessed.
Again, it was normal for me. I didn't think it was anything special, but I would ask my dad to wake up at 6 a.m. So I'm in 5th, 6th grade having my dad take me out in the cold and do a 30-minute workout before school starts just because I want to be able to dunk a basketball in 6th grade.
Wow.
Which, by 7th, 8th grade, I was dunking a basketball. And again, it was just me wanting to dunk a basketball, nothing more than that. So my parents might have realized it early on that I was kind of unique in that way. I didn't realize it. The basketball coach has a son in 8th grade who's very good. And he's taking his son into the city to kind of play where the competition's a little bit better. The coach said, maybe you should take your son into the city where my son's playing. It's just a little higher level of competition. My parents were like, all right, we'll take him in there. He likes to play basketball. Here's another place for him to play basketball. And so they did. And I just fell in love with it because it was just, the competition was so fierce. You know what I mean? It was so intense. That program was called Reach. These kids were coming to play basketball. It was really just a place for them to eat. You know what I mean? We would have to have, juice boxes and pizza. And it was just where they would get their meal in the summer. You were meeting kids that were, honestly trying to find somewhere to sleep. I remember at one point, once a group of kids realized where I lived, they realized where I live, and I had an above ground pool in my backyard. These kids would just show up. They would just ride their bikes all the way out to where I lived and just show up, just to swim in the pool, because they didn't have anywhere else to go. You know what I mean? There were no pools for them to play in the summer.
Parents were cool with a bunch of kids coming to hang out.
I mean, they were cool with it. I remember one time we were out of town and we came home and there's like 6 kids in our backyard playing in the pool. I mean, I'm sure our neighbors were like, what the hell is going on? You know, just breaking into our yard and like hanging out in the pool.
No, they're cool. They're my friends.
I went to a very good Jesuit school, youngest of 4 boys. There was academy there. So me and my 2 youngest brothers went there from 7th grade to 12th grade. But after 4 years, after my sophomore year, I actually got kicked out of my high school. Very strict school. I was doing a 7-on-7 in the summer. And I remember the football coach walking up to me like, oh, you can't join the 7-on-7. The school just called me and they're asking you to seek education elsewhere next year for your junior year.
What? Was this a surprise? Okay.
Big surprise. Like I didn't ever do anything too crazy. Like I was, they were just kind of sick of the Barwin boys. I was definitely like a little bit of a punk. My teacher took my CD player one time and I like broke in her office and took it back. I would be late for class a lot. I wouldn't tuck my shirt in. We had this like walk-a-thon. Halfway through, I like got a ride home. So just like stupid stuff just like that. And they were just like tired of it. But my parents were just so upset and reacted that the school was kicking me out that they put up a fight. And the school let me back in under the condition that I couldn't play sports my junior year. And we did that. So it's shocking that I went back to that school.
Your junior year of high school, you didn't play any sports?
Well, so I didn't play football. I went back, wasn't going to play any sports, was the agreement. I didn't get in any trouble. The school said, you've been great. We're going to let him on the football team. It was homecoming week and I practiced for like 2 days. We get down to the 4th quarter. We're down by like 3. There's like 30 seconds left. The head coach is like, all right, man, we got to put you in. So he puts me in at wide receiver. They throw the ball to me like 3 times. I catch the winning touchdown. We win the game at homecoming. My picture's like in the paper the next day. Following week, we have like a take-home quiz. I miss school. So I come back and they're going over the answers in class. And the teacher's like, go to the library and do it while we're going over the answers. And so again, I'm still, 16. I'm kind of a punk at this time. I'm leaving. The last kid by the door who I know, who are like buddies, I'm like, hey, give me your worksheet. And so and he's like, oh yeah, here you go. It's just normal. And so I'm going to go to the library and like copy his worksheet. And Mr. Bell called on him and he panicked and was like, oh man, Connor grabbed my worksheet on the way out.
Under the bus. So
I only played 1 football game, had a great senior year playing football, playing basketball, got a scholarship to play football after my senior year.
Yeah. University of Cincinnati, yeah. At this point, you're just looking to pay for college.
Happy to not have to take out any student loans.
Yeah.
Was psyched to keep playing football. And at this time, I thought I was going to be a, high school teacher or high school coach or something.
Yeah. Now, when you got to college, was it different in any way? Like I imagine the competition was higher, right? Did you enjoy that?
My mindset changed pretty quickly upon getting to college. For better or worse, pro sports seemed so far out of reach. University of Cincinnati was a mid-level college football program. I wasn't going to like Michigan or Ohio State or, Alabama. But as soon as I got there, my whole perspective changed because a lot of your audience will be familiar with this name, but Brent Selleck was there. And Brent had just finished his sophomore year, his best statistical season in college. And everyone around campus was touting him to be a professional player. So he was going into his junior year. I was an incoming freshman. I was essentially his backup. And so that first summer, we're working out together, we're running together. And right from, the first couple of weeks I was there, seeing that he was being touted as an NFL player, it changed my perspective where I thought I can be an NFL player because I compared myself with him. I knew I could, do everything he was doing. A month after being on campus, my goal was quickly changed from I'm going to be a high school teacher, coach to,
wow,
if I stay healthy, I can make it in the NFL.
Did Brent start hearing footsteps for the tight end position?
Well, I joke with him. If he didn't leave for the NFL 2 years later, I was taking his spot.
Coming for him. That's great.
We had a great, couple of years together and he's a stud, had an unbelievable 11-year career here in Philly and, probably will go down as the best, tight end in Eagles history.
Yeah.
My senior year, Brian Kelly was there, the coach at Notre Dame right now. He kind of ran forward wide receiver, spread offense. Didn't really utilize the tight end that much. And then we kind of had a big hole on defense at defensive end. Again, I was 6'4", 240, very athletic, pretty strong, where you can kind of put me in at defensive end spot. And he sold it to me that unlike offense, where a lot of things have to happen for you to even get the ball thrown to you to make a play, if you play defense, it's up to you every time. You just got to beat the tackle.
You can make a play, any play.
You can get the sack, you can get a tackle.
Yeah.
It's just you and that offensive lineman every single play. And so I bought into it right away, made the switch. It's worked out pretty good.
Yeah. Now that's fascinating to me because so at this point, senior year, you must be thinking about, playing in the NFL, right? Switching from offense to defense, switching to a completely different position your senior year. Is there any thought that, what if this doesn't work out? This is my senior year. This is my chance to make the impression and get drafted. Were there any thoughts about that?
Not really, because I knew I would have success at defensive end, and I did. Some teams were still looking at me as an offensive player. Like I went to the Senior Bowl, which is the college all-star game, and I played tight end. And then I had a number of teams that came to UC and worked me out as a tight end. So some teams still didn't really know, what position I would play. Then I ended up getting drafted by Houston and played in a 4-3 as a defensive end.
How did you find out that you were drafted?
You get a phone call. Back then, 10 years ago, the first and second round were on the same day. So we all sat there and watched the TV, and we're just praying that at some point that my name got called in that first day. And about halfway through the second round, the Houston Texans called.
And first thoughts, you get that call.
The first thoughts were Houston, Texas. Like that was, I was thinking like, Texas. I've never been to Texas. I'm moving all the way to Texas. Who's the quarterback? Who's on the team? Who are the coaches? Because through the draft process, there's all this gamesmanship. Teams are trying to hide who they like, who they don't like. My agent had kind of told me, a handful of teams that were interested. I had went on a number of formal visits to teams. But Houston never did we talk to Houston. So I think that was my first thought. It was a surprise that it was Texas.
So you go to Houston. What's it like to be in the NFL? You made it, man. Like any thoughts around, holy crap, I'm here?
Well, that first year, yeah, it was awesome. The first year's intense though for a rookie.
Yeah. Probably
still really is now for everybody. There's a lot of stress. You're trying to figure out if you're good enough or not. For me, I remember a moment, the preseason was tough for me. I was thrown in there. I was a second round pick. So like they threw you in there with kind of the starters and you're kind of trying to let you find your footing. And I remember playing against the Kansas City Chiefs. It was a Pro Bowl left tackle. And I was like, man, there's no way I can get around this guy. And I was just like running into a brick wall. It's like everything I did didn't work. I was like spazzing out. It was too much. And then I remember I was like, I want to do something crazy. So I did like a fake spin move and it worked and got a sack. And that just like kind of opened everything up after that. It was just like, I needed a moment to kind of like have some success, calm myself down. And I think after that, everything started slowly picking up. But overall, that rookie year is pretty hard.
It sounds like, just as a layman, I think of draft day, like I just said, like you made it. It sounds like that's just the beginning, right? At that point, you get drafted, but you haven't made it yet.
You've given yourself kind of the next opportunity.
Right. The window's open.
Yeah. For the most part, it's a very honest business. Once you get drafted, again, I was a second round pick. So, if I'm really analyzing this stuff, you're probably going to get a year or two because the team's made that kind of investment in you. But, you're not going to get much more than that. If you really show up and can't play at all, they'll cut their loss and move on very quickly.
So tell me about your first game of your second season.
Again, rookie year was, we made it through the rookie year, learned a lot. And then I had a full off season, no basketball, no nothing, trained my ass off, had gained probably 10 or 15 pounds, was really ready to go, had a great summer, had a great training camp. And then first game, first quarter, we're playing Peyton Manning and the Colts, and they're driving down the field. It's like second and long. I remember being on the right side playing defensive end. Antonio Smith is just inside me, one of my favorite guys I ever played with. And, football people will know that the famous like Peyton Manning draw, they ran the draw and I kind of rushed the passer, turned to redirect to make the tackle. And my Antonio Smith right next to me stepped on my right foot And as I turned and tackled the guy, he kind of cemented my foot into the ground and my whole leg kind of went and my foot didn't. Completely dislocated my ankle, broke the bones down there. And that was the end of my second year in the NFL.
Right then and there, you knew right away that the season was over.
In my mind, it literally felt like my foot was like a peanut butter jar and my leg was the peanut butter jar and my foot was the lid. You could feel it just open. Like you just could feel it just turn. And I was like, that can't be really what happened. And then I laid on my back and there's a great picture on the internet of me picking up my leg to look at my foot to see what happened. And my toe is literally like hanging off the right side of my leg. And I remember looking to our sideline where everybody was, and you can just see all of my teammates and coaches just kind of be like, oh, cover their eye and try not to look. Cause it was literally, my foot was just like dangling off.
I saw that. So I cringe like crazy and stuff like that. And I'm like cringing like crazy right now.
On the field, they have to like turn it back. So I can remember them like right away trying to like get it back. So that was really scary. It took about a whole year to get that recovery. In my third year, I played my whole third season pretty much like taped cast on my ankle, but I made it through it. And over time, it doesn't even bother me anymore. Thank God to, some great trainers I had in Houston and a great doctor that did the surgery.
Was there any doubt that you'd play again?
There was doubt at the beginning. Yeah, there's a lot of doubt that, when you see your foot hanging off the side of your leg, you don't know if you're going to be able to play again. But it was just, you slowly, work at it and you start to see, improvements every couple of weeks.
So you spend 4 years in Houston and then you become a free agent. Signed with Philadelphia in 2013, Philadelphia Eagles. Had you ever been to Philly before?
Never been to Philly.
You signed sight unseen or did you come visit?
No, sight unseen. I decided Philly because, it was a historic franchise. The Cowboys, the Giants, the Redskins, Philly. I think I was excited about that. They had a young, quickly rising coach and Chip Kelly that everyone was excited about. And then probably most of all was Jason Kelce and Brent Selleck were here, and Trent Cole, who were all fellow University of Cincinnati football guys. I was really tight with Kelce and, he told me great things about Philly. And, he really kind of encouraged me that this would be a great place for me.
I read that most of the Eagles live in like South Jersey or in the suburbs or something. You decided to live in Philadelphia, the city.
I like being in the mix. I like living in the city. My dad was a city manager, so I understand kind of great things about cities when they work. I decided that I wanted to live where I played. When I played 4 years in Houston, I lived there year round. I even lived in downtown Houston, which at that time, no one lived in downtown Houston, but I was kind of forcing it. But I knew I was going to live in Philly, so I lived in the city. And yeah, you're right. Most guys live in South Philly, right down by the facility. Some guys live in Jersey. There's more and more starting to live in the city.
Yeah. And you would bike to work every day.
Yeah. That first off season, I would bike from, I lived in Fittler Square area. I would bike down to South Philly. My family was always kind of public transit advocates. I rode my bike and rode the train in Houston, which like nobody rides the train in Houston.
I didn't even know they had trains in Houston.
Exactly. But I took a cities course in college. I had this really great professor, and he kind of talked about the growth of cities and suburbs and, kind of what happened because of cars and freeways and kind of the four-door syndrome and how you, when you go from point A to B in a car, you don't experience anything in between. And there's a lot that you miss. And when you ride your bicycle, you can stop. You know what I mean? You can smell things, you can hear things, you can see things. You're just moving slower. So for me, it's also just a functional
right,
thing.
And it bakes in like an hour of cardio a day that you don't have to like
Exactly. Yeah, I get to the facility and my legs will be warmed up. I'd be ready to go. And then it's like a natural coffee. You wake up, the breeze on, cold air on your face, wake you up.
What types of things in those first, few weeks, months were you seeing, hearing, smelling on your bike ride in Philly?
Well, we love the kind of stoop culture of Philly. I would always ride by Ralph Brooks Park at 20th and Tasker. And that's where I decided to have my first project with my foundation. And it would have never happened if I didn't ride my bike past that lot, which was kind of this, small tot lot that was kind of falling apart. And then there was this old parking lot that had turned into a basketball court with holes in it. And there were like wooden backboards kind of falling down. It was really in rough shape. There's this very powerful Stop the Violence mural kind of as a background to it. But there were always kids, there playing. And I knew I wanted to get involved in playgrounds and public space. And, this one just kind of pulled on me, and that's where it all started.
Yeah.
Because I rode my bike past it.
Right. Was it the type of thing where you one day rode past it and stopped and looked? Or was it just sort of day after day looking at it like, you know what? I think we need to make a change here.
It was day after day. You know what I mean? I just ride by it and see it, ride by it and see it. You see how some days it'd just be empty and there'd be no life. And then some days there'd be 15 kids out there, with a basketball, trying to play basketball, where there's like potholes in the court. So it just kind of, I don't know, I just kind of felt it after, weeks or months riding by it. The Eagles, they helped me, put me in contact with the city. And, I called a meeting at the court, at the playground. I showed up on my bicycle and there's like 10 people there, all ready to sell me on why I should get involved in this site and invest in this site. And then I met this great guy, Jeff Tubbs, who had started a foundation and was doing mentoring in that neighborhood. And he had been working with people in the neighborhood about kind of a plan and what to do at that site. Initially I thought, I could pay $50,000 or, $70,000 and just repave the court and put up some new hoops. But I quickly realized, talking to Jeff, talking to my parents, seeing the way Mural Arts does things, that kind of just this kind of drop in a new piece of equipment and then leaving is not a sustainable way to do things. So, I decided to slow down, kind of do a more comprehensive plan and do it alongside the community and the neighborhood. So we worked with that community for probably 2 years to help them kind of reimagine what they wanted to see there. And now it ended up costing about $750,000 instead of
a little bit more,
instead of $50,000. But, it's truly, such an inspiring place for me to go by and see how much life is there every day now and what's happening at that site. I think just seeing the community garden come to life, seeing just the fresh paint on the court and the kids playing there, it's just a very humbling feeling to be a part of a project like that. I mean, we've gone on to do 2 more and we're working on our 4th now. But
do you have any advice for any Philadelphian who wants to get involved in their space?
Just talk to your neighbors. You have way more in common with them than you think. And you have an interest in your neighborhood that it's held accountable, it's well maintained, it's getting sufficient, city services. And so I think, if anything, get to know the people you live around because you guys are all in it together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's funny. I feel like, on my block anyway, I also live in Fishtown and nobody talks.
Yeah, well, I think start talking to people.
Yeah. Thinking about it in this perspective, we all live next to each other. We spend most of our lives like within 10 feet of each other because the wall's, on the other side of the wall.
Well, we're all in our little tiny little bubbles. You know what I mean? And you can make your bubble your house, but man, it's a lot more fun if you make it like the 6 blocks you live around.
Yeah. You start with the Eagles in 2013, 2014, you lead the league with 14 and a half sacks and you go to the Pro Bowl.
Yep.
When you think back on that season, how do you feel?
It's a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. I mean, it was obviously my best season. I had a great coach in Bill McGovern, had a great defensive coordinator in Billy Davis. Give a lot of credit to Vinnie Curry, who's back on the Eagles. A lot of people talk about, I had a lot of sacks that year and we did a lot of like moving me around and stuff. But essentially it was pretty much me and Vinny just running stunts together the whole season. And we got really, really good at it. A lot of ways I would play off of him. And he had 9 sacks that year, which was his career high. So I'm thankful to him. But for me, when I look back on it, that was such a fun year. We just missed the playoffs at 10-6, which was hard. But going to the Pro Bowl that one season is something that, I wish Brent Selleck would have went to the Pro Bowl one year. He should have, he had an 11-year career. It was just special. And I'm thankful to have that opportunity to do it once. I wish I, would have went back a couple more times.
You mentioned a couple times when you said best season for you and a couple others, you said statistically best season. Why make that distinction?
Well, because it's how you do personally for me is never as fun as, when the team does good. I mean, as everybody knows, the Eagles went on to win a Super Bowl the year after I left. I mean, you would trade that in for anything. You know what I mean? To be a part of something like that. My first year in Philly, we went to the playoffs. That was a lot of fun that year for the whole team. You see what happens when you go to a playoff game in Philly. The whole town goes crazy.
You're on a 6-year contract in Philadelphia. The first 4 years must have been a freaking blast. I mean, you were widely regarded as one of the leaders, if not the leader of the defense, maybe even the team. I don't know. Making this intense impact in Philadelphia. Overall, would you say that in terms of like the NFL, you were living the dream? You must have been having a blast.
No, I had a blast. I mean, I was young. It was kind of at that point in your career where the physical and the mental all come together. You know what I mean? Loved being in Philly. Again, those first 2 years we won 20 games with Chip. Things were pretty good. My wife moved here. She got a great job. Things were good. Yeah, I loved being here. This is where I thought I would play the rest of my career. And This would be home after I was done playing.
Yeah. Now, after the 4th season, you were released by the Eagles. When that happened, you said a lot like, yeah, it makes sense. Kind of made a business decision, right? The contract was kind of backloaded a little bit. How did you feel though when that happened?
Human nature, you don't feel good when someone lets you go. You know what I mean? You look back on it and if you would have signed better contracts, for me, that might have never happened. But, the contract I signed, made me, disposable at that time. And they switched defenses and, there's a lot of change going on. And it happened and you have to move on. But yeah, it was tough. It was tough anytime you get told, they don't need you anymore, especially after you had made great friendships with people on the team, people outside of the team. You realize kind of where things were going.
I've always wondered, because this happens all the time, right? You see NFL players get cut regardless of how many years they have left. It depends on that year's and the immediate coming year's dollars. Do you think there's any hesitance with NFL players to really, really invest and ingrain themselves in a city, knowing that?
Well, no, that's why I decided to live where I played, because I had some decent security, in Houston and in Philly, but as you can see with what happened to me, you ultimately don't. And for a lot of guys, whether it's half or 3/4 of a roster, it's even more, year to year. That's why guys don't invest in or commit to the communities they play in, because they know that, at any time they could get cut. So a lot of guys move to a city, live there for the season, and they either put roots down where they're originally from, put roots down, where they went to college, and don't choose to make home where they play, because for the majority of the league, you're kind of bouncing around.
Yeah. So the following year, you signed a 1-year deal with the Rams. And the Eagles would go on to win the Super Bowl that year. You must have had some complex feelings when that happened, right? Because a lot of those guys are your friends, your former teammates, but you're now a member of another squad.
Well, I had a great year in LA. We went out there and, Sean McVay's first year there, we, Andrew Whitworth, me, John Sullivan, some other older guys came in. And we're part of kind of turning that team around. We went to the playoffs for the first time in I don't know how long.
You guys did. Quickly.
We lost a tough one. We lost a tough game in the playoffs. Had a couple turnovers that we couldn't overcome. But yeah, when the Eagles won the Super Bowl, it was like, again, I understood what it meant, I think, to the city, maybe more so than a lot of guys that won the Super Bowl, just because, how involved I was in the city. It was kind of a bummer. Felt like I really missed out. But again, it wasn't my choice ultimately to leave. You quickly get over yourself when you see Jason Kelsey and some of your other best friends and, Doug, who, I think is great, seeing him, win a Super Bowl. And again, knowing all of my friends around this city that aren't involved with the Eagles, but what it meant to them, then you quickly get over, feeling bad for yourself and being happy. I was living in Malibu, and after the parade, it was such madness. Kelsey was like, I got to get out of Philly. And so he came and
after his mummers thing.
Yeah. Well, exactly. So he was like, man, I'm coming out to hide out at your Malibu cottage. And so it was cool. He just came and kicked it with me for a week, got to take a deep breath, after such a grueling long season, and then the excitement of the Super Bowl, and then the parade.
Yeah, that's awesome. So the following year, you signed a 2-year deal with the Giants. The first year did not go well. Lost 6 out of the first 7 games. And then I guess the focus on the season changed more towards the future. And then you wound up being released earlier this year. So, I mean, what's your outlook now on playing in the NFL?
I spent the last couple of months training pretty hard. I left New York. It was kind of a bad situation. You don't want to be an older guy on a team that's going young. Somebody playing was like 7-9, Doug's first year, when even up to the second to last game, we were playing again in the playoffs. So in New York, we played half the season when we already knew we were out of the playoffs. So that was strange for me. So it took me a couple months to figure out, whether I wanted to keep doing this or not. And ultimately I, decided that I want to keep going. So I've been training and I'm going to look for the right opportunity.
You think you'll stay in Philly otherwise?
Yeah, Philly's home. Philly was home for 4 years. And now I've kind of turned into that other guy in the NFL where I'm bouncing around. And, when you're in Malibu for 6 months or New York for 6 months or, maybe somewhere else I go for 6 months, there's not enough time to kind of ingrain yourself in the community when you're kind of in and out like that. So Philly is it. It's where we're going to live when I'm done playing. Again, the foundation is here.
Yeah.
And so we're pretty busy with stuff, with all of that.
Now, you have an annual concert benefiting the foundation. Why a concert?
Well, initially, I love music, and initially I started going to Union Transfer right away. It's one of my favorite rooms in the city. And I met Sean Agnew there. And, I said, hey, man, I started this foundation and we're going to rebuild this playground. Can we have a concert to raise money? And then I'll match what we raise. And, Sean's the best. And he was like, yeah. And he was like, man, you're going to match it? Then, man, I'm just going to give you everything for free. And it allows us to really raise some real money. So somehow we got Kurt Vile to do the first show, which was awesome. He did it for free. We raised about $85,000. I matched it, and we put that $170,000 to that first project at Ralph Brooks Park. And, we've grown a little bit every year, and now we're at the Dell. This year, it'll be our second time at the Dell, which is almost 6,000 seats. And we have Future Islands headline the show with Hop Along and Strand of Oaks and Carl Blau, September 5th. So just around the corner. This really historic venue that the city had poured some money into about 10 years ago. And they do a summer series up there. It's very much kind of, an R&B soul genre. And it's owned by Parks and Rec. And it's run by Parks and Rec. And I thought, I need to have a show here. It's a beautiful space. There's not any indie rock or any rock shows there. We got to have a show here. And you can sell 1,200 tickets at UT. We can sell 5,000, 6,000. And so the huge break for me or for us was getting the War on Drugs to do the show. And I had to court their manager for almost like 2 years. And I can remember telling her this idea about the Dell. And she had never seen the Dell. She had never been to the Dell. And so the War on Drugs played a show at the Troc, and I picked up the manager after the show and I drove her to the Dell, and we broke in, and I'm showing her this venue, and she's absolutely blown away because it's in East Fairmount Park. It's looking over the Schuylkill. There's just this beautiful backdrop of trees. And she's like, how the hell do I not know about this venue? And I'm like, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. This is perfect. This was probably 2015. It wasn't until 2 years later, 2017, that they had the new record coming out. They were trying to figure out where they're going to play in Philly on tour. And I was like, hey, we can tie this into your tour and do it at the Dell. It was the first rock show that had been there in, 40 years. Yeah. People loved it. And now, again, we're going back this year with Future Islands. So I'm excited. I'm excited for people to see the venue. I'm excited to help the venue kind of grow a little bit. And I hope everyone's there on September 5th.
What would you say is a common misconception about you?
Well, I think for the most part, I am who people think I am. But kind of a random one that really isn't important at all is I have a tattoo on my right bicep. And everyone in Philly thinks it's Philly skyline. Everyone in Houston thinks it's Houston skyline, but it is the Detroit skyline where I'm from.
It's actually the Detroit skyline? Because I feel like you could just get a generic
well, I mean,
one.
That's the thing now. The Detroit skyline is different.
What would you say is the biggest challenge facing Philadelphia today?
From the sporting world, I think it's just you go into any season, it's about, staying healthy. Obviously with Carson this year, I think it's, and the rest of that team, I think keep staying healthy is always going to be, one of the biggest concerns. And then in the civic world, and for us in public space parks, it's really trying to crack the code on generating some revenue for neighborhood parks. You see in big cities, the kind of parks that, are for tourists, they're programmed, they have revenue. I mean, there's a Starbucks at Dilworth Plaza. The neighborhood parks need a way to kind of generate revenue. So we're trying to figure that out. One of the exciting things we're trying to do is kind of create this thing we're calling the MTWB Street Team, and kind of, the parks we've worked on kind of create almost like a district where we kind of can fill the gap in kind of the maintenance between what the neighborhood and the community is responsible for and what Parks and Rec is capable of. And then we kind of fill in that void. And so we're working on that, but it's always a funding issue. In a lot of ways, to better understand it, it's like trying to do what the Center City District does for Center City to a network of neighborhood parks.
Yeah, that was one of the first things that came to mind, because you got Center City District, Old City, University City. There are these specific entities that are here for that, right? Yeah. Can that be done elsewhere in the city?
I think it can. I think it could. It just, you got to find a way to pay for it.
Yeah.
Like Center City District, it's a tax on the businesses.
Right.
I don't think in the neighborhoods that we have parks, we can tax the neighborhood to do this. So it's got to come from the private sector or the big foundation world.
What excites you most about Philadelphia today?
I think on the sports, and again, I'm very much a football and basketball fan. I think you have to be super stoked about what's happening with the Sixers and the Eagles. If you're a 10-year-old kid growing up in Philadelphia, I think it's going to be a great decade. Both are really well-run organizations, I think, with Howie and Elton Brand. And I think they've got a bunch of both teams have some young, great stars that are committed not only to their craft, but committed and understand, how important it is and how lucky they are to be in this city. I think on the public space side, I think the investments you see all over the city is a great moment. I think, obviously you can debate what is smart and what isn't, but I think the overall investment around the city is a good sign. I think the investment Mayor Kenny is making in, the parks infrastructure is so needed right now, which I'm excited about in the city. Everyone around the city should be excited about.
I think what's crazy to me is how those two things are so intertwined, because the amount of pride that Philadelphians have now in Philadelphia because of the renaissance of the sports teams, Eagles winning the Super Bowl, the process working out. Bryce Harper's coming to town, signed a 13-year deal, no trade clause, no opt-out. So he's here. You see that in sports, which is the thing I think that touches every single Philadelphian's life. Like they can choose to live in their bubble and not go to the parks and not talk to their neighbors, but everyone follows sports. I think that it's adding this level of confidence and enthusiasm about the city that's going to translate to the public space, the parks, things like that. Would you agree with that? Have you felt that at all?
I hope you're right. And I think so. I mean, the Eagles are Super Bowl champion now. They have got that monkey off their back. The Phillies are have won a world championship. So yeah, I hope so. I mean, there's a lot of momentum. I think there's a lot of way to connect the two. I think you have to be smart about it, but I think, this is a very prideful city, and, a lot of it stems from people's love and passion for sports. And I hope it carries over into other areas of this city.
The 5th annual Make the World Better benefit concert takes place at the Dell Music Center on September 5th at 7 p.m. and tickets are available at mtwb.org or via the link in the show notes. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe and leave a rating wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow along and say hello on Twitter and Instagram at PodPhillyWho, and you can join the email newsletter at podphillywho.com. Here's a very special thanks to Philly Who's patrons: Sam Schwartz, Josh Koppelman, Bob Moore, Alex Hillman, Vanessa Generelli, Ryan Fitzgerald, and Matt Glick. If you'd like to join them in supporting the show and getting bonus content, you can do so at patreon.com/PhillyWho. Philly Who is a Q9 production. This episode was recorded in the Philly Who studio powered by CIC and was hosted and produced by me with associate production by Matt Labick, Angela Travasi, Jackson Neal, and Lauren Hunter, editing by Max Graham, artwork by Lauren Carhart, and special thanks to Lindsay Scanapico. For Philly Who, my name is Kevin Schmidlin. Till next time.